The new Hyte X50 case comes in two versions, the X50 and the X50 Air, and a number of different colour schemes. In total we have 8 permutations. We have the raunchy X50 Wild Cherry, the interesting X50 Matcha, the unusual X50 Taro Milk, the Barbie X50 Strawberry Milk, the perforated X50 Air in Snow White, the second X50 Air in Pitch Black, the imposing X50 in Pitch Black, and finally we have the regular X50 in Snow White. And which version have I been sent for review? Yup, the X50 in Snow White. My first impression of the X50 is that it is a large ATX case, and secondly, a very curvy ATX case. Clearly, this large curved glass panel dominates the aesthetic. However, the metal front panel is also pretty impressive, and surprisingly, the metal rear panel also. We'll look at those in just a moment. To give you an idea about pricing, and bear in mind it comes with no fans, so happily Hyte has sent me 2 4-packs of fans. These 4 packs, £35 a piece including VAT here in the UK. The regular X50 with glass panel is £149.99 including VAT here in the UK, $159.99 in the US. I imagine that is plus tax. If you buy the Air with mesh panel, i.e. without the curved glass, and I'm guessing this is horribly expensive to manufacture, significantly cheaper. Instead of £149.99, it's £119.99. Instead of $159.99, it's $129.99. So if you like mesh for airflow and you're not fussed about the aesthetic of the glass panel, the Air with mesh is a lot cheaper and presumably will work better. But we'll come to testing later. For now, let's look at the looks. I'm going to start by removing the front panel rather than the main panel or the right hand panel, because the front panel is an absolute piece of engineering. Pops off like so. Bizarrely, it reminds me of a fencing mask. The perforated steelwork has then been curved and it is just flawless. It's an absolutely lovely piece of work. You can see that now I've removed the front panel. There's a fan rack in the front. You can install a 360 radiator or 120 or 140mm fans. And once I remove the fan rack, you can see it is significantly offset and accommodates incredibly chunky cooling. I am slightly disappointed to report that although Hyte invented a cooler they called Thick, they have not sent me a thick cooler to use with this case. Furthermore, I'm quite confident I'm going to end up installing fans in the front, and I'll probably put cooling in the side. We move on to the main glass panel, which we remove by pushing upwards. There's a cutout here for your fingers. It's quite heavy, requires a little bit of a push, but comes off smoothly. And the way that works is that these 4 screw heads locate in cutouts in the metalwork, and we have 2 pegs in the top. So to replace it, and I found this to be slightly fiddly, perfect. Similar deal around the right hand side, except here it's mesh. I'm going to assume if you have the Air version, the main panel is like this, except it extends further over. This panel also reminiscent of the front panel, but it's curved in the one plane. Lovely piece of metalwork. Impressively rigid, very nice construction, and that reveals not exactly what you expect to see. Storage goes here. That's the back of the CPU socket. Cooling can go in the side here. The power supply goes there, which explains the bizarre bulge in the roof of the case. Like that. Novel, to say the least. Let's just remove that storage bay, which is surprisingly hefty. And the idea is that you can install one hard drive or a couple of SSDs there. Functionally, it's completely over the top. I can't imagine it's going to work better than a standard hard drive mount. And bearing in mind, it's completely covered away behind the right hand panel. Surprised by that choice by Hyte, but it's different. And then we come to the back of the case. Let's start by noting the goldish Hyte logo plate. You're only going to get this on the first 50,000 cases, which suggests that Hyte thinks they're going to sell an awful lot of X50s. It's a nice touch. However, it's around the back and no one's going to see it. And similarly, I doubt they're going to see this louvered effect. In fact, let's take one of those expansion blanks out. Literally never seen anything like it. Makes me wonder why they bother putting blanking plates in place when they clearly don't blank. Clearly it's a styling choice. For the first time ever with a case, I'm wondering why they didn't just leave all the blanking plates out and just put screws in place so you can put a graphics card in. But now that I've seen this, I like it. I like it a huge amount. It seems a real shame that this is around the back, where most people will never see it. You'll see it when you build your own PC, and that's the last time you'll see it, apart from when you're looking through the case at an angle. In fact, my first impression with the glass is you might want to go for the cheaper mesh version, but if you have the glass in place, you can see this back panel with the mesh. It's going to be obscured. And a quick look at the bottom of the case. We have curvy feet, a magnetic filter that pulls off to reveal the openings for fans if you choose to put them in the floor, and also mounts. And as I have 8 fans, I'm sure I'm going to end up putting 3 in the floor, 3 in the front, 1 in the rear, and a liquid cooler in the side. Obviously no cooling in the roof. Glass, don't forget. But so far I'm liking this case a lot.
Looking to buy a gaming PC? Then you need to visit CyberPower PC. We'll help you with the best spec at a price you'll love. With us, you get 5 years warranty, a lifetime of technical support, and systems built by experts. So it's no wonder so many gamers choose CyberPower PC.
Let's put some hardware in it, shall we? And see how it looks when it's a bit full. We have the power supply installed in that slightly curious compartment at the top. It's a Montech Titan PLA 1000 watts, and as it says on the box, manufactured by Seasonic. You can't see from this angle that it's fully modular, but you can see the stranded cables. And when I turn the system around and tilt it back, you can see that we have the fan above the main compartment. It's an unusual configuration. And in the main compartment, the motherboard I've gone for is this Sapphire Nitro Plus B850A Wi-Fi 7. Crucial SSD. Processor is an AMD Ryzen 7 9800X 3D. And we have for memory, ADATA XPG Lancer RGB. That's rated at DDR5 6000. 2 impressions. There's loads of space, and the installation so far is lovely and tidy. One feature I hadn't mentioned is the lack of cable grommets. You can see here the main power cables coming through from the back of the motherboard through this opening. And to give you a better look, they're rubber. Never seen that approach before. We've seen brushes with a recent Corsair case, the Air 5400. We've seen grommets any number of times. Just a smooth opening in the case that's actually made of rubber. That's a first for me. The next piece of hardware is the AIO cooler going on the CPU. It's this Montech Hyperflow ARGB 360. I'm installing that in the side of the case. After that we'll have the graphics card, then I'll do some initial test runs, and once those are out of the way we'll think about fans, putting those in to see what impact they have on cooling. The cooler's installed and it looks the part, and now it's time for the graphics card, which is a Sapphire Nitro Plus Radeon RX 9070. This is unusual for an AMD graphics card because the power connector is a 12-volt high power connector that goes in the back of the graphics card and is neatly covered up by the back plate. And now we can reinstall the panels and we're ready to run the PC. We're running a combination of 3D Mark Speedway Stress Test and Cinebench R23. The system's drawing 450 watts at the wall socket, the CPU's drawing about 140 watts, the graphics card 245 watts. In the first test we only have the fans on the AIO cooler and they're set to 1000 RPM, which sounds like this. At an ambient of 19 degrees Celsius, the CPU is clocking 5.2 GHz, but is running at a troubling 92 degrees C. The graphics card's running at 2.5 GHz and is running at a fairly cool 60 degrees C. For the second test, we increased the speed of the AIO fans to 1600 RPM, which sounds like this. And this has a notable impact on the temperature of the CPU, which still runs at 5.2 GHz but drops to 85 degrees Celsius. Graphics temperature also drops slightly to 58 degrees. It's time to install some case fans. That clever front bracket in the case supports very thick coolers, but we don't need that facility with fans. There's no radiator to worry about, so we reduce the offset to the minimum. We install 3 FA12 case fans and we're ready to test. The FA12 fans are rated at a maximum speed of 1500 RPM, so we've set them to 1000 RPM. The AIO fans are still running at 1600 RPM. The system now sounds like this. The graphics temperature is still 58 degrees, but the CPU temperature has dropped to a very healthy 73 degrees. Adding those case fans at the front clearly helped the CPU temperature, however the system was rather noisy. In this test we've slowed the speed down, so now the AIO fans and the case fans are all running at 1000 RPM, and it sounds like this. And we can see the CPU temperature has risen slightly from 73 degrees to 75 degrees. However, the graphics are constant at 58 degrees. For the final test configuration, we install another FA12 case fan in the rear of the case and 3 of them in the floor of the case in intake. We now have a total of 10 fans. That's 7 FA12 case fans and 3 fans on the AIO cooler, and they're all running at 1000 RPM. And that sounds like this. Adding the extra fans makes almost no difference to temperature. The CPU temperature drops from 75 to 74 and the graphics temperature remains at 58 degrees. When we use smoke to visualize the airflow, it's quite clear what's going on. With the 3 fans on the AIO, remember they're in the side of the case in exhaust, you can see the airflow from the CPU cooler drifts out to the side. Increasing the speed of the fans on the AIO cooler makes the jet of air out to the side somewhat stronger and has no impact on the graphics card. Adding case fans in the front of the case clearly helps to feed air to the CPU cooler, but again it doesn't have any impact on the graphics card. Perhaps the only surprise here is that adding case fans in the floor of the case and at the rear of the case also has no impact on the graphics card. Whether the same would be true with a 300 watt RTX 5080 or a 600 watt RTX 5090 is a question for another day. And we come to my conclusions about this Hyte X50. Primarily I'm going to focus, I think, on the aesthetics of the case, which to my mind are absolutely superb. So this Hyte X50, which is £150 here in the UK with this wonderful glass panel, to my mind requires more bling. The case fans that Hyte sent me are not RGB and they are regular fans, not reverse fans, and that lets down the aesthetic to my mind quite significantly. So I suspect you're going to have to budget £150 for the case and then £70 to £100 for cooling that matches the case, in addition to all the other hardware and the AIO cooler. That makes it rather expensive. So north of 200 up to 250 for, as it were, a kitted out X50. On the other hand, if you had the X50 Air with the mesh side panel, a case I have not seen, but I like the idea of that case. That's £120 here in the UK. That requires 3 fans in the front if you're putting the cooler in the side, which certainly works well. That would be more like 160. So the separation between the Air with fewer fans, because the floor fans and the rear fan are just for looks, you don't really need them for cooling. You're looking at a wide separation between the Air and the regular X50. So if we bear that in mind for the moment, my pros and cons. Pros, the good points: gorgeous curvy styling, high quality metalwork, excellent potential for really good cooling. Cons, the negative points: no fans are included, so you have to budget for some. I would suggest 3 with the Air and 7 with this X50. The second negative point: you have no support for rear connection motherboards such as BTF and Project Zero. When you consider the nature of this case, this wonderful glass panel, the fact you get this excellent look at the main compartment, Project Zero makes perfect sense, and you can't do it with the X50. Third, cable management is rather basic. The fans in the floor of the case, the cables kind of trail around. It's not terrible, far from it, but as this case is so much about the looks, cable management is an important factor, and it's just not great. It's not bad, it's not great. Having said all that, I'm going to give this X50 a worth buying, an 8.5 out of 10. I suspect the X50 Air will be a 9 out of 10 and a must-have, but I don't have the X50 Air. I have the X50. So that's where I'm going. 8.5, worth buying. Do please check us out at kitguru.net, and remember, we're on TikTok.